Welcome into Inside LAFC podcast. I am Max Bretos, and the bearer of good news, as you all saw, LAFC are through to the conference semifinals, beating the Vancouver Whitecaps in 2 games. So this week, we will welcome in the radio voice of LAFC, the one and only, you know him, you love him, Dave Denholm, to recap what we saw with the Whitecaps. And then Dave is going to stick around. It has been the 1-year anniversary of LAFC winning MLS Cup. We will relive that incredible day at BMO Stadium, and then we'll give you our top 3 moments from 2022 that helped shape the season and helped LAFC lift the trophy. We encourage you as well to provide your top moments from 2022. Leave it in the comments section. Reach out to us on our social media handles so you can be part of the conversation as well. Great show coming your way. Dave Denholm, Inside LAFC podcast, starts right now. And we are ready to go. As you can see, I'm very well accompanied by the one and only radio voice of LAFC, Dave Denholm, Talk Soccer on X, Twitter, and social media. Great to see you, Dave. How was the call?
You too, Max. Thank you. It was a tough one. It certainly was not an easy ride through Vancouver. It never is, really, for LAFC. So just happy to get out of there with the win, get it behind us, and move on.
We will talk about that. Also, just a reminder, we are going to look back at the 1-year anniversary of LAFC winning MLS Cup, November 5th, 2022. It should be etched in your memory. Dave and I will give you our top 3 moments from the 2022 season, excluding MLS Cup. We invite you to get involved. Leave a comment here if you're watching on YouTube, or reach out to us on our social media. What was your favorite moment of 2022? What was the most influential moment? We will cross-reference them. We'll see. Because I'm sure it's a very long list, Dave, because we already went over our list and we had different lists completely.
Sure. So we're doing excluding MLS Cup, the final.
We're doing excluding MLS Cup.
That's above and beyond winning that, obviously.
Right.
So it's just, yeah.
Indeed. So you can get involved too, and we look forward to that. So let's talk about the Vancouver series. I'm sure everyone, when we saw the matchup, and we heard Steve Cherundolo say this too. Someone asked him at a press conference, is it hard to get excited about a team you just played on decision day, a team that you've played 4 times before the postseason? And he was like, yeah, it's a little hard to get up, but we will do it. And clearly they did. And they got up for this matchup, which was huge for Vancouver. The second leg, much was made of the record attendance that they were going to have opening the Upper Bowl. And in the end, LAFC, very professional. They really took care of it in that first leg. There were some nervous moments in the first half, but then coming down and stamping it down and getting 5 goals, which was the back end of a stretch where they scored, I think, 15 goals over 4 games. They were, for all the times, Dave, and you called all these games where there's frustration with not scoring goals, it seemed like the lid came off.
It definitely. And look, it's not as simple as this, but they're rested. And it's not just that, but it makes a huge difference. They played over 50 games, Max. They played a ton of games. We saw it last season. No disrespect to Seattle. They got the job done in the Champions League final. They won. But they didn't even make the playoffs after that run. Now, we made the same run in terms of how many games we played, and yet third in the West. You could argue, you can't really argue we deserved lower than that. Certainly, we were probably the second best team in the Western Conference all year, realistically. But full credit to Seattle for binking that at the end. But it's just been an amazing run for as many games they played. But they're rested now. And look, here's the bottom line: Vancouver's on the rise. They are. They're a good team.
Really good.
Yeah. Really well built, coached, really tough. I honestly thought this was the toughest first round matchup that LAFC could run into. So to get it done like they did, and I'll go back even to game 1, because people are talking about game 2 from the Vancouver side. Of course, you're going to complain about the referees and the call. I get it. They didn't score for 135 minutes of that series because LAFC shut them out in the second half at home. Now it was 2-2 at halftime, very back and forth. You kind of applaud Vancouver for actually going out and playing on the road, which I liked. It fed into our hands, though, and we started dominating after halftime of that. I think whatever Steve said at halftime of the first game was must have been perfect, because after that, they, of course, shut them out and outscored them 4-0. So they fully deserve to beat Vancouver. Vancouver's not as good as us, but they're a good team. So it was a nice 2 matches, and you knew it was going to be difficult up there on that turf.
I'm glad you said about the Whitecaps. I had a chance to see them, and I'm excited. I like the Whitecaps. I like Vanny. Obviously, some Ryan Gold, Brian White are guys that you would say, hey, they could play for a lot of MLS clubs, and you kind of in the big picture of the West, you kind of pull for them. The point that you also made about how Vancouver have a gripe, they do in the second leg. Obviously, everything kind of went against them. The penalty that Mario Gonzalez won, I imagine if that happened to LAFC in reverse, we would be in an uproar. The collision with the referee, Tim Ford. But none of that in any way takes away the fact that I'm confident that the best team advanced, and this is the way it went. And they did it in 2 games. Not everyone's going to clean house here in 2 games. And for some reason, if it went to 3 games, it would be confident, and the sports books would agree that LAFC should get through. So I can understand that part of it. But LAFC proved they won 2 different ways, grinding it out on the road, didn't lose in 3 games in Vancouver. That's incredible when you think of it, the home field advantage they have, and then just doing it with flair with those 5 goals in the first leg. LAFC really delivered. But I got to ask you, have you seen any? I'm trying to recall the times when a referee collided with a player, and usually they'll stop the play. In this case, they didn't. From what I understand, that is sometimes up to the referee. But
it's not about the ball. When the ball hits the referee, they have to stop. When the ball hits the referee, that's been the new thing. They stop it. So I was a little confused on that at first, and then I realized, it wasn't the ball that actually ran into him. Like, he didn't stop. The referee did not stop the ball. And quite frankly, the referee was in good position. It happens. It wasn't.
He's got to be there. That's exactly where he wants to be. He wants to be behind the goal to see if there's anything going on.
Vancouver would be complaining if he was out of position and missed a call. So he was in fine position. Honestly, I thought the penalty was on Veselinovic, not so much Tristan Blackman. People were saying, "Oh, Blackman got the ball. But Veselinovic tripped him up." I've seen far less given for penalties, and once the penalty's called, again, VAR is a joke. You know me, Max. I'm anti-VAR, but they can't change that call. It's not clear and obvious. If he probably would have called it a non-penalty, they probably wouldn't have changed it to a penalty, frankly, because it wasn't clear and obvious. So he made the call. It's a tough call. Here's the thing, Vancouver. He didn't score. Now, there is a pathway
for a long time.
Yeah, there is a pathway in these playoffs to win a game without scoring. We know that. Penalties, right, after 90-plus minutes. But when you don't score, you open yourself up to get beat. That's just the bottom line. If you can't score, you're in deep trouble, and you're probably going to lose 99 times out of 100. So, again, full credit to LAFC for getting the job done. I don't just say that lightly. As you said, that's a tough place to go, and to get that kind of result when Vancouver's, backs are against the wall, they must win. They have to, and to do that when Vancouver was under that pressure. And to their credit, I thought it was a very good 1-0 game. Really great saves from both keepers, good defense from both teams. A lot of times, some good offense. There were some chances. So it was pretty much just a great playoff game against 2 good teams, and the better team just happened to squeak by.
LAFC using their depth. We saw that. You mentioned getting the rest, and they're healthy. You saw Kellen Acosta come back into the lineup, where you could circle back Matty Bogusz. Just a quick comment here before we move forward about who stood out. I love that Timothy Tillman was able to move forward, play a different role, and do it very well. That just is another wrinkle for this team that shows how dangerous they're going to be. Denny Bouanga is just so consistently spectacular, getting those big goals and continuing, even though it was a penalty, but being involved regularly. There were some great counterattacks, and the transition play, which we knew would be key when they let Vancouver play, would be good. I would close it, and you can pick some other people, or you could agree, and I'm sure that we'll have some similar ground that we cover here. But Maxime Crépeau against his former club, there were some boo birds there as well, being able to make 4 or 5 excellent stops to secure that clean sheet and LAFC's passage to the next round.
Yeah. I was going to say Maxime for sure. I think Aaron Long played phenomenally this game too. Nothing against Jesus Murillo and the rest of the defense. They all did great. You get a shutout in the playoffs on the road. But I think Aaron had some really just minor things, little things that you might not catch, or maybe they happened earlier in the game and you don't remember them. But things where he was so sharp defensively. and spot on, and had to be because Vancouver is a tough team, especially getting forward on counterattacks. And I thought he played great as well. So I wanted to single him out a little bit. Not single him out because nobody played poorly. You can't play poorly in Vancouver and get a result. But yeah, Aaron Long was really very good, especially Max when they're rotating. He didn't start the first match in this series. So people say, well, he's got a lot of rest. Yeah, but they are rotating enough to keep everybody fresh. But sometimes you got to get back into it and stay sharp. And kudos to the guys who came in. Even Kellen Acosta, who had a little bit of an injury issue late in the year. He looked really good in this match. And that's tough, when they're not necessarily, you're not always in the start, haven't always been in the starting lineup necessarily every match lately for whatever reason. They still did a great job.
I love the Aaron Long point out because, I think people are going, hey, where's Aaron Long? And it's just Murillo and Chiellini are starting this first game. And that's the best fit. And they switched here, and it could be Chiellini Long whenever the next game rolls up, which we'll talk about here. But it just goes to show it. Aaron Long is still a world-class defender, and to be able to bring him in a rotation of 3 is an incredible luxury that LAFC will have. We will have 2.5 games here. Sorry, Dave, you want to mention that about Aaron?
I was even going to say, like Danilo Maldonado hasn't been playing much lately, but I said it all year with Mario, our producer Mario Rios on the radio broadcast. Whoever started at center back was like, oh, okay, they're starting tonight. Who cares? That's great. They're all they're all playing well. It's like there was no concern. I mean, when I'm looking at the starting 11. Mario, look who's in the center back spot. It's like, okay, they're playing great. And I mean, I don't have any problem with whoever Steve has put out there, quite frankly. So you're right. It's a luxury. That is a great word for it. And you're going to tighten up your rotation.
Daniil's a luxury guy. He played well in this Champions League run. He by necessity because injuries. That he's not going to play, but he's there. A really good fourth center back is rare air.
When you look at it. Yeah, when I study, as I study for games, the longer the season went on, real quick, Max, with so many games we were playing in other competitions. If you looked at the MLS stats, even everybody got a lot of time I'm talking the top 15, 16 guys. Of course. So. Steve has done a masterful job of that because you look at Sergei Palencia, even before and after the injury, which was not an insignificant injury. He missed a lot of time. And he got a lot of games. Everybody played a lot. They're sharp, and yet they're still fresh, which is probably bad news for everybody else in MLS, if I'm being honest.
And LAFC is going to be really fresh here because it's going to be 2.5 weeks between games. The conference semifinals will take place the weekend of November 25th or 26th. Date TBD, time TBD, the week after Thanksgiving there, just to give you an idea of what we're waiting for. And that's because of this international week, which we'll talk a little bit. Some LAFC players will be on international duty as well. No complaints because everyone wants about the international break to be honored, and MLS is doing that. And think about it, if they didn't, Buanga, Kiki Oliveira, and others unavailable for LAFC. So this is the right choice. It's just the way the schedule is. We'll touch on that a little bit. It's going to be a long wait. That can't benefit LAFC, but we have confidence in Steve Cherundolo and the coaching staff to keep those guys sharp. They'll have a little time off, and then they'll ramp it up, I'm sure, a couple weeks before the matchup. And in the playoffs, Sporting Kansas City knocked out St. Louis City. That is significant because if LAFC can get to a Western final, they will host it at BMO Stadium. Now, they could host a conference semi, and I'm curious your preference. I know it sounds crazy to say that, Dave, but you're a historian of this team, and I'm sure you would. There's some interesting options here. So, FC Dallas, who've played Seattle very well. They're going to play Friday night. You can see that on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Tune in so we can do a little scouting on your own. FC Dallas wins, and I think they have a shot because they played very well in the first leg in Seattle. That would be at BMO Stadium. If Seattle wins, which is expected, it would be up there at Lumen Field. And I know we all want to play at home, and I do too. But the prospect of playing Seattle LAFC with the history from 2019, 2020, where they knocked LAFC out both years, I know from the neutrals, I know the folks at the MLS offices are licking their chops. To me, that would be one of the biggest games in MLS playoff history, full stop.
I don't disagree, but I disagree with who I want. And I'll not for the reasons you might think. Here's the bottom line. I respect what you said, and it is, I think you're right with what you're saying. no doubt. The only reason I would want to play Dallas is not just that it's at home, which it is, it's not on the turf. And that Seattle turf is horrible. I'm sorry. I know the Seattle Sounders fans think they created soccer. You cannot be taken all that seriously as a massive club when your turf, like, first of all, okay, turf is bad enough, right? We can all agree on that. We'd rather have grass, but I understand I get it. Portland's turf, I know Sounders fans are going to hate me for this, much more playable than the Seattle turf, Max. The Seattle turf is like bouncing around like the 70s NASL turf. It is. It changes
the Vancouver turf is kind of like that too. Yeah.
Kind of in the middle of Portland and Seattle. Yeah, it's not good. But at least in Portland's, it looks like a real game, if you will, sometimes. There's some bounces occasionally. But Seattle's is like bouncing around. I'm sorry, it's like playing with a rubber ball up there. And there's no excuse. They earned the second seed, and now they're the top seed in the West that's remaining. If you got to go up there, you just got to take care of business. And we have before, so I'm not saying it's not. I just don't want to play on the turf for other, injury possibly, everything. It all adds up for me. Yes, of course, I'd rather play at home anyway, but I don't think Dallas is any easier of an opponent. That's not the reasoning. It's just being at home in front of the 32-52 and not being on that turf in Seattle. But I think both teams are just as tricky. You know what I mean? I really do. I think certainly either one of them could beat us. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And yet I would think we're the favorite. Probably not the favorite in most people's minds if you had to travel to Seattle, but we're the favorite in terms of where these teams are at, so to speak. I don't think there's any doubt LAFC is the favorite now in the West. Take that.
LAFC's played well in Seattle last couple of years, so I don't think there's that.
Absolutely.
Other than the turf, which is a very good point, and
it just looks different. It's tougher to, it's those little bounces. Now, again, and we just played in Vancouver a few times. Maybe they'll be a little more used to it if they had to go to Seattle. That's fine too. But yeah, it's just not, let's just keep it to the friendly confines and get the 32-52 in there.
It's a lot of wear and tear on the legs to do turf back to back, even though there's going to be a gap there. I agree with you. FC Dallas, if Dallas beats Seattle, don't start cheering too much because that's a very good team. And if they beat Seattle, that means they have intent to get through. But the idea that LAFC could, after this season, when you mentioned how the Sounders made a CCL final and they didn't make the playoffs, Toronto made a CCL final, they didn't make the playoffs, and then LAFC can make the playoffs and potentially host 2 home games in the semis and the conference final would be incredible. So we can sit and wait. So everyone enjoy that game on Friday, and then we'll circle back and discuss a little bit later. Your thoughts on the international break, Dave? It's obviously not a great time. It's going to be tough. There's going to be some critics about MLS about the way they have their season. But to me, to sit down and honor it across the board is the right thing. And now the only question is, and we'll talk about the players that are heading off, make sure everyone gets back healthy because that would compromise LAFC's season if anything happened to our guys.
Yeah, my whole thing in this is you're 100% right. You cannot play through this window. They've done it before, sadly.
They have.
And no, you can't do it anymore. This league is too advanced for that. Too many great players, too many people that are relied on for their international teams. You can't do it during the playoffs. Here's the thing. If you want Leagues Cup, raise your hand. That's me. You have to stretch out the season this much. You know what I mean, Max? Like we could finish probably before this international window if you don't have Leagues Cup. But I want Leagues Cup. It was tremendous. We all loved it, fell in love with it. So I think in that sense, you just have to play it out till, early December, which is pretty much what they've done throughout the history of MLS, last year being the exception with the World Cup obviously being crammed into the winter. So that made a difference. But so there's just not much else they can do. That's the bottom line. And I don't think, if you're going to take 3 weeks off around the time of the Champions League final, like early in the season, I think it could really affect the team. I don't think there's going to be too much of an effect. I mean, look, there might be a little rust in the first few minutes, but after the season, as long as it is for all these teams, when you make it that far or make it this far, as the teams that'll be in these final games, I can't imagine there's going to be too much rust, no matter how much time you've had off. I think it's much more important to be healthy, in my estimation. Even the little nagging injuries that we don't, that don't necessarily keep a guy out. but maybe they're completely healed from them because of this break, things like that, where they're not going to miss the game, but they're going to maybe be at 100% rather than 85 or 80%. I think it's just that far supersedes like worrying about if a team's a little rusty in the first, I don't think it would last throughout a whole match anyway. And,
Yeah.
don't use it as an excuse. Bottom line, you got to go win.
No.
So I think this is fine. It's the best you can do. Let's put it that way. It's the best you can do with this international window, which is not going anywhere. I think this
it's not. This is important. USA, CONCACAF is playing in Nations League to qualify for Copa America. So that's big. Everywhere else, it's World Cup qualifying. I'll give you the list. There's 5 players heading out and 3 big ones. Obviously, we'll talk Stipe Buke, who he's not playing for LAFC. He's a young player, but he's going to play for the under-21 Euro qualifiers. That's important for him and his country. Denholm Maldonado, Nations League against Mexico. So he is going to be involved there. Maxime Crépeau for the Nations League, probably not going to play, but I get the feeling he's closer to that number 1 shirt for Canada than he was obviously 6 months ago, a year ago, even 2 weeks ago. Canada has games against Jamaica, home and away, or away and home. He's not going to play, but he's there. Now, the 2 big ones, obviously Crépeau is going to be gone. That's big. But Denny Bouanga and Kike Oliveira, not only because they're playing World Cup qualifiers, but they're going pretty far. Bouanga is going to play for Gabon against Kenya on the 16th and November 21st. So keep in mind, November 21st, we're talking about games the 25th and 26th. So you would hope maybe they play the 26th to give him an extra day. And then Oliveira, Argentina, he's played for Uruguay. He has played in World Cup qualifiers. It's amazing. This is it. Against Argentina, they're big rivals in Buenos Aires and Lionel Messi on November 16th, and then Bolivia in Uruguay the 21st. So
that's in Uruguay. Well, at least you don't have to go to.
Those are long trips, man.
Yeah, but at least you don't have to play at that La Paz 12,500 feet, right? Like you won't actually have to run around in that. So that's such a home field advantage for Bolivia. But it's very good point. As long as Denis, Gabon teammates don't get a red card in the 10th minute and get him sent, him essentially taken off the match. What a waste that was, right? But what a shame that was. But again, he handled it so well, and that's just international duty sometimes. But boy, does he recover from those trips, Max. Like I'm an old man, okay, but you take a trip like that and he can just jump right back in like he did time and time again for LAFC. I mean, I'm expecting him to do it again, which is difficult, but yeah, I think he'll be fine. I think they come back. He'll probably be back by about the 22nd, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I don't know officially what his travel plans are, but at least still a few days in advance of any game. So that's good news. But yeah, and you wouldn't want to be playing these kind of playoff games without these guys. That's just would be ridiculous. Absolutely.
No, those 3 guys without them, they're not going to advance. They need all 3 of those.
But it's not even fair. I mean, other teams would be missing players too, but that just takes away from the actual who's the best team. We're trying to figure out the good thing about this best of 3. I'm not going to get too far deep into this, Max, but a lot of people didn't like it. One of the many reasons I liked it was it really the better team is probably going to win 95% of the time with the best of 3, realistically. I know upsets happen in sports, and rightfully so. But it's time, you can let those happen in the next rounds, and the tougher games and the teams who deserve to be there. Okay, if upsets happen, but these best of 3s, the better teams are getting through. It looks that way, certainly in this first year that they've done it recently.
And with the exception of the LAFC game, the game 2s were better than the game 1s. The game 2s were well attended, exciting conclusions. So we'll see that. And there's a few game 3s. We'll get to it. Hopefully everyone comes back. Denny says he's going to score for Gabon. Hopefully he qualifies for the World Cup or gets close to it with Gabon, and we'll see how well these guys. Yeah, we'll be pulling for them. But hey, a lot to absorb, and we still have the anniversary to reflect on. November 5th. We were both there at the stadium. We won't forget it. We'll talk a little bit about that when we return on Inside LAFC podcast, and Dave and I will give us our top 3 moments of 2022 that we're able to position LAFC to lift MLS Cup. You ready, Dave?
Yes, sir.
All right. That'll be next when we return on Inside LAFC podcast. Dave Denholm joining us. Rate, review, download, subscribe, tell a friend. We'll be right back.
on the ground to Elias Sanchez on the far side. LAFC trailing 3-2. Cheeky dragging it to the end line. Palacios keeps it in play. To Bale in the middle. Goal! Gareth Bale has tied it up! Gareth Bale has tied it up! It's 3-3! Jump for LA Football Club, ole! Ole!
I saw your clip again this week with Mark Rogandino, Sarah Takata in the background, everyone celebrating after the Christian Bale goal. It was so Gareth Bale. I can't believe I said Christian Bale. Gareth Bale. I figured that we passed that at one point. The 1-year anniversary of MLS Cup, and we were just absolutely elated. It was the greatest, and I've covered a lot of sports. I've been to a lot of sports, all kinds of sports. I've been to 2 Florida State national title games. Nothing compares to what we saw that day at BMO Stadium. And look, what happened that day, we can make a list on our own.
Yes.
Whether it's Carlos Vela lifting the trophy, obviously the Bale goal, the penalty shootout, it's endless. And we saw the videos on Apple TV about this. Will Ferrell said that he couldn't make a Hollywood script out of it because it'd be thrown out because it would be too contrived, which is so very true. But we're going to do a list of the top 3 moments from 2022. Just quickly, your reflection about that game, something has stayed with you a year later.
That game, what stays with me is not just the way it went. It was the whole atmosphere. And I know we talk about it a lot. Certainly, BMO Stadium is one of the great home field advantages in MLS, and the crowd and the 32-52, fantastic. It was just even to the next level that day, which I didn't think was possible, really, for as good as those crowds are always. It was just at a different level. It wasn't, Max, where the Super Bowl, where no real fan gets in, or not many, you know what I mean? These were the diehards who had to be there. No matter what, I guess I'm sure they paid more money for the privilege of being in them. Kudos to them. Everybody was like edge of your seat. Great crowd, just crackling. I could feel the intensity, and that's really what sticks with me. And another little personal note is once we won, Mark Rogandino at the time of the last season, before he went on Apple TV with you, he was doing the post game, halftime, pregame. So I was able to just take off the head. I went right down to the pitch and was hugging everybody. We were all celebrating. I know, you were, and I got a chance to do a video right when Carlos hoisted the trophy. I was standing not too far away, and in some shots you can actually see me over there, just by myself, just recording it on my phone after we'd all celebrated for a while. This is when he's hoisting the trophy, the confetti. Oh, it was amazing, just amazing. So you're right, that would take up the top 50 moments of 2022. Let's be honest, that game itself and that whole build up to that day, truly spectacular. I was on the field when Tom Brady lost the 17-0 to the Giants in the Super Bowl.
Wow.
The confetti was falling. They ran onto it right after the end of the game to go do interviews on the field, and not even close to this. This MLS Cup 2022 is just in a league of its own. Just truly, it was an amazing day.
Yeah. The David Tyree game.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, all right.
The 17-0 New England Patriots, yeah.
So we'll go through our list. And just to close, for Carlos Vela, who's been here from the beginning, to see him lift that trophy, that trumped everything for me. That was just amazing. And it was like almost the proof of concept from the beginning that he said he was going to win trophies, and he did it. It was very special. And sharing that moment with you and so many people on the field. I have a photo with you as well, so I will cherish that forever. But let us get into this, our top 3 moments for 2022 that made it all possible. We'll go from 3 to 1 in any order. These are going to be we might grab you by surprise. We've already shared them. We want you to get involved. If you're watching on YouTube, leave your favorite moment of 2022 or most important moment, and we will see what comes out to the top. I'm going to start with my number 3. You'll do 3, 2, 2, 1, 1.
Sure.
My number 3 is a loss. It goes back to August 22nd when Austin beat LAFC, blew the doors off the black and gold 4-1. And it was a dark moment. And Steve Cherundolo said the guys didn't even play today. He was upset, and talking to him afterwards, and he wanted to use that as that platform to spring forward. And boy, did they do it, because they never even came close. They barely lost. They just were able to really galvanize and build that team, get new players, and begin that process to hit every target they wanted to hit. Supporter Shield, Western Conference Final, MLS Cup. And I'm a believer. Maybe it is cliche with sports, but to kind of almost hit a bottom to see what is required. And to me, that makes that game very important. And I love watching it because Austin, when you look at it, Austin looks like they have it all figured out, but they didn't. LAFC were plotting all the way.
That's a great choice because we've had worse score lines, I guess, theoretically. Some games that were worse on the score, Atlanta United back in the opening season. But that was the worst performance I think I've seen out of LAFC, maybe in the 6 seasons now that we've included this season. And yet, like you say, they bounced right back. I mean, that's the difference, right? They didn't have many of those last season, but when it did happen, they turned it around. And that's the true championship team, because in MLS, look, this isn't the Premier League where Man City and Liverpool and all, the 3 or 4 teams, you're going to take a trouncing every now and again. You're going to get beat up every now and again. That's just the way MLS is. It's how you respond. And you're right, Max. It's a great call because they did respond. And that's all that matters.
They did.
But it was,
that's why I made the list. If they didn't respond, they didn't respond. It's not on there.
Not that day. Yeah, not that day. That's for sure. It was if it wasn't the worst performance LAFC's put in, it was right up there. And we can laugh about it now because, again, they played incredible all last season, winning the Supporter Shield. My number 3 is the goal by Gareth Bale against RSL. And now some people say, well, Bale didn't do that much. What it did was it, first of all, showed you who he really was still, because there were some questions of, is he going to stay healthy? Is he past it, if you will? Like, can he really give you much? I mean, he just blew by RSL's defense, and no shame in that. I'm not trying to pick on them, but you still saw at what level he was at, which is above who he was playing. No disrespect. It's just Gareth Bale, one of the best of all time. And it allowed me to think, okay, we can still get something out of this guy. No doubt about it, right? He's still going to be able to. I didn't know he was going to do what he did in the MLS Cup final, but that's why I pick it as one of my favorite moments, because we did see that, we did see his kind of just his class. As they always say, class is permanent, and he's at a different level. And when we needed it, he was there. And that kind of showed me where he was physically, even in that RSL game. Now, again, I know he didn't play every minute by any means, but he had enough. And I knew he was going to have enough once I saw that. So that was my 3rd favorite moment.
Oh, I love it. I remember him ripping past Justin Glad. Again, all due respect to Justin Glad, who's one of the highest paid defenders in the league.
Player. He did not know what hit him. He did not know what hit him. And there was nothing he could do about it. That's when in every sport, Max, you've covered all these sports. That's when somebody's at a different level. There's great players around them who are playing against them. There's just nothing they can do about it, right? There's nothing you can do about Lionel Messi if he decides he's going to score right then. If he's on his game and he's at his highest level, you just can't do anything about it. I mean, then that's what Gareth Bale did, that goal. He was just at a different level.
My number 2, perfect. It'll go plug right into Gareth Bale. And we got this internal email that this was going to happen. I was like, all right, and I'm like, this can't be real. Does that say Gareth Bale? All right. Yeah. And then it also had Giorgio Chiellini on this. And we're like, this is an April Fool's trick. So we got that, and then the realization that they were going to come. And my number 2 is the Gareth Bale introductory press conference, which was in July. And I got to MC that, and I'm like, nervous because it's like, who is there? And then it's Gareth Bale. You're shaking his hand in the back. Oh, welcome to the club. And it was, you're sitting there going, this is what Manchester United or Real Madrid do, or David Beckham, watching his documentary. This is what happens with players like that and clubs like that. So it was very surreal. And then, just to sort of put it into a bigger scope, Giorgio Chiellini had a press conference, those two, and then they were both at the games, and they did the sha-la-las, and the teams were hitting with the water, and they were just galvanizing. They had been in LA for hours, and they both had that moment in separate games. But it culminated with the Gareth Bale press conference, and then obviously it was tough to get him into the lineup, but he was there, and then obviously it ended as best as it possibly could. But we had all these that summer market was unbelievable with Chiellini, Bale, Seba Mendes, who played great at the World Cup, Christian Teo, who was there. Just to hear all these names roll in was like, this is fantasy. This is science fiction, but it was real. And it was all circled around because the Gareth Bale thing, that is going to be very rare to ever see something like that. It was great to be part of it.
Yeah, that was worldwide, no doubt. And it kind of reminds me I try to tell people this sometimes, even, fans of the club. Here's the thing. Just realize how big we really are, because Gareth Bale is not going to Brighton. No disrespect to Brighton. I love Brighton. There's no chance. He can't go there. Like, it's never going to happen, right? He's never going to Newcastle. Sorry, at that point. He's never going to, and these are great clubs. He's never going to Bayer Leverkusen at that point, right? But he'll come to LAFC. And again, I know it's not just a football thing. I'm not trying to, I get it. But that's some of the power we have. That's the ability we have to go out and get players, and it's the case for a few MLS clubs, quite frankly, and that's an amazing thing, especially for a club that's in its sixth season. So it just reminds us how good we have it, really. I think that's a good point, Max. And that's really what you're saying. And like, getting guys like that, getting all those guys, just tremendous. My number 2 is the game at SoFi against Club America. Now, this one's a little more personal. It wasn't a great game, let's be honest, 0-0. It was fine, but broadcasting from there was amazing. That stadium is ridiculous. The crowd was awesome, with the doubleheader, of course. There was Chivas, LA Galaxy first, and then we played Club America. Just a great night. I loved it. And there's not much more to say about it than that, in the sense of I don't remember what happened in the game much. I mean, that really wasn't important on that level. That was the League's Cup showcase. It was amazing playing in SoFi and broadcasting there for myself.
Okay, let's go to the number ones. Drum roll, please. My number 1, October the 2nd, Portland Timbers versus LAFC. It was the penultimate regular season game. Remember, LAFC stubbed their toe against Nashville, so they had to get that result to secure the Supporter Shield and home field advantage. They did it. 95th minute, Denny Bouanga going at the Portland defense, scoring the goal, and then the rest is history, because if that goal doesn't happen, Dave, in all likelihood, the dominoes don't fall. The MLS Cup at the very least is probably in Philadelphia, and who knows what happens. That goal set the table for everything that we were about to see. So, it wasn't a playoff game, but boy, it sure felt like one.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite plays to call, too. Denny. It was just incredible. I got to admit, that was, from a personal standpoint, that was amazing, number 1. I love your choice. I went with...
I love your choices.
Yeah.
These are good.
I went with the first playoff game. People are going to forget this over time. I went with the first playoff game last year. You had to beat the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Right? And I know, obviously the Galaxy have seemingly been down. I'll whisper it because nobody really wants to talk about it. The Galaxy were probably the second or third best team in MLS by the time the playoffs rolled around last year. They were really good, and they were really dangerous, and that was a really good game, but we were just better. And just to see that again, to beat them in that way, I didn't think Austin was going to pose much of a problem, quite frankly, in the Western Conference Final. No disrespect to them. As you say, Max, they handled us in the regular season, but just the way we were on a roll, once we beat the Galaxy like that in that tough game, I kind of felt like it was definitely ours for the taking. And, obviously it worked out, but that was a tremendous game by LAFC.
Beautiful. Well-crafted lists. I concur to your point about the Galaxy. They were primed. That was nervous moments. I'm sure we all felt it. Cherish that day. Celebrate it every year. And bring back the memories. Share your memories with us.
Is that my ring back there? Is that my ring? I think. I think I still have my ring in the box there. I take it out every now and again. So.
Oh yeah.
I think so.
Very nice, Dave.
My championship ring, baby. Oh.
Enjoy, and let's do it again in 2023. We have a shot at it here, Dave. Great to chat with you. Great to have you on the podcast. We'll do it again soon, and hopefully we will be adding more stuff to your cabinet there.
Max, I appreciate it. Go black and gold.
Let's go black and gold. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in. We'll keep you connected to the club between now and whenever the season goes. Hopefully December 9th at MLS Cup. TBD. We'll see you then. On behalf of everyone here, Dave Denholm joining us here in the podcast. A reminder to rate, review, download, subscribe, tell a friend. We'll see you next time on Inside LAFC Podcast.